Welcome to another episode of Talking Success, connecting the global FinTech community. I'm Stacey Jafta, and today I'll be talking to Kevin Mutiso, the founder of Alternative Circle. Alternative Circle is a Kenyan-based company. They are a channel for financial institutions to provide digital financial services to micro-entrepreneurs through the SHIKA app. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me, Stacey. This is quite exciting.
Of course. Things are a lot different from the last time we spoke. How have you been, Kevin?
Anxious, obviously, because this is unprecedented. I'm worried for the family, worried for all those people who could get sick. Trying as much to support our local government here with anything we can do as an industry. So it's an interesting time, but hoping for the best. We have a motto now. It's hope for the best, plan for the worst. So
Definitely. What kind of tools do you have to help the government?
Well, one of the things we have is the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya. And the cool thing about it is most of the digital lenders in the market are members. And what we've just done today is we waived all late fees for our customers.
That's incredible.
So that's one of the things. And then we are trying to be part of the recovery effort. We are positioning ourselves to government and saying, hey, guys, look, we have been building credit scores on digital platforms, and we can identify what a micro entrepreneur looks like, what an SME looks like. And we know for a fact there's a cash crunch that's going to happen if it's not already happened. Any initiatives that you're going to have to distribute capital to these people, we can be part of that process, and we want to help because, if our customer is able to get up, then so will our businesses, and our businesses will not only get up, but will grow as well. So those are the two things I think we can offer the government, and we're trying our best. I hope they listen to us. It's a new time. It's a new age. I think they have to listen to all ideas that are on the table, and I think we have a compelling one.
I love that. How different has operations been with Alternative Circle during this time as well?
Working from home has been crazy. I think everyone is going crazy. I think we're learning so much about the family members that we live with. But more than that, I think it's also a testament to the will of the human being. I'm a bit of a chubby guy, so I've been trying to do exercise and trying to stay sane. I think I've read and watched every documentary about Great Depressions and recessions just to get ideas on how to manage the post-COVID stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the other things, I sound excited, but it's quite worrying because we give out 30-day loans, and when we look 30 days into the future, it's quite bleak. And so there's that nervousness, and we are certain there will be losses, huge losses in the industry, and potential job losses. And so we're just trying to stay positive, hope for the best, plan for the worst. I think that's the main thing from working from home. It's weird.
Has there anything you found after watching these documentaries or listening to these podcasts that you've digested some information that you have then implemented into Alternative Circle that maybe you can give that advice to the listeners?
Well, we've not implemented them yet because it's still early days, particularly here in Kenya. We just have 50 cases at the moment. We're not yet on lockdown, but we have a curfew.
Okay.
But I think the main thing is just being bold. I think right now is the time for the craziest idea.
I love that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's unprecedented. We don't know what's going to happen. So the craziest ideas are what I want to hear from my team and my stakeholders and my partners. And I'm hoping the different stakeholders also want to hear crazy ideas that will rebuild us. Because the thing that I've learned from listening to podcasts and reading is that the crazy ideas won, and the crazy ideas are what fixed or saved the situation, right? So
it's definitely a time where you can experiment. Within the payment space, many have been experiencing a decrease in transaction volumes. Some businesses may not even have much to lose at this point. If there is something you want to try, do it, and we have the time.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's some really good, crazy ideas that will come out of the alternative circle ecosystem.
Well, actually, let's just start from the beginning. How did you get the idea to build Alternative Circle, and tell me a little bit about the company?
Okay, so Alternative Circle was started in April 2016. Officially, we got our certificate May 2016. But the story of Alternative Circle is it has to start with Kevin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin Mutiso, who is me, speaking of myself in third person is weird, I've had a very interesting life through no fault of my own or nothing of my doing. What happened was I've always been obsessed with entrepreneurship. So when I was a really young boy, my dad sort of nurtured that streak and gave me access to reading materials like the Fortune magazine and the Harvard Business Review. And it's from there that I learned about business leaders like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and Jamie Dimon, who, most kids had, no, most teenagers had heroes like Superman or Michael Jordan. Mine was Warren Buffett.
What age was this?
I think I was about 13, 14.
Insane. Wow.
So my dad is the guy who's sort of been nurturing me. And then on my 16th birthday, instead of buying me a PlayStation like everyone else, he gave me the money to invest in the stock market here. And so I bought some stocks in 2016, and I made money, but not 20 in 2002, I think. And then I made some money by the time I was finishing high school in '05. I had some runway to sort of do other things, and we did, and they all failed. But that was the beginning. And then when I finished high school, my dad has a very interesting rule in our house, and to this day, and my daughter will live by this, that either you go to school or you go to work, no sleeping at home. As a result, I ended up getting a job, again, through no fault of my own or nothing I did. It was the best time to enter the financial markets in Nairobi, in Kenya, because it was a change. We're shifting the stock market to full digital. We're shifting what we call the custodial of shares. In the old days, they would trade shares and there would actually be share certificates.
Mm-hmm.
Now there were digital share certificates. We were doing the largest IPO at the time ever, the Kenyan IPO. And so I joined the Suntra Investment Bank right at that point. And that's where my journey begins, because it's there that I learned so many things. I learned trading. I learned how different businesses make money, different business models. As you can imagine, very few people were trading in the stock exchange. So I was exposed to all these high net worth individuals and high net worth clients. And then one took a liking to me. We call him the chairman. And the chairman hired me to run his investment portfolio, which he had with a bunch of friends. It was structured like an investment holdco, but it was taking sort of private equity positions. So they would buy something and want to hold it for 7 to 10 years and then exit and do that cycle yet again and again. And in that network, we had everyone from the CEO of large investment companies, directors at banks, CEOs at telcos. And so it exposed my world to all these different new people and different business models again. And, just teachings. I love telling a story. I smoked a cigar for the first time when I was 22 years old at the Norfolk Hotel with the CEO of Norfolk Hotel. And the reason he did that, he could see that I didn't know what the cigar was, and he could see that I had never drunk alcohol other than a beer, right? And so he taught me about the different wines, what a Chardonnay is, what this is. And so I got immersed into this life. Um, After that, I moved into, we did that for 5 years. And so we invested in everything. We invested in real estate, we invested in companies. And so as you can imagine, by the time we're raising $1 million for Alternative Circle, which I'll talk about, I had an idea of what investors are looking for. I had an idea of how to structure decks. I had an idea of what's important for business to be successful, because of all the mistakes we made in those days. So there's one big mistake we made. There's a legendary entrepreneur in Kenya called Moses. I won't say his last name, but if he listens to this, he'll know it is him. And we invested in his business, and it was a great business. It's one of the largest businesses in its group today. But some of the clauses we put into the share purchase agreement may have looked like they were protecting us, the shareholder, but in hindsight, they were limiting the entrepreneur's ability to do the amazing things he did after we got out. Right? So things like that. Fast forward, I started a lending business, ran that for 5 years. It was a manual lending business. We expanded into different parts of Kenya. And then I got an epiphany one day when I got an SMS from a friend introducing me to a digital loan. And because I understood what goes into lending, I was fascinated, because I was like, how are these guys doing KYC, which is know your customer, and which in every jurisdiction in the world is very clear on what the law is for a lending product. The second thing is, how are they doing the scoring? Because what data are they using to determine whether the client is credible to get that loan? And then the third thing was, how are they transferring the e-value to the customer seamlessly? It seemed obvious that it was M-Pesa, but in those days, M-Pesa did not do integrations with businesses. So that was fascinating. And when I started the exploration, I entered a world that I knew was going to be my life for, this was going to be the rest of my life. And so we started Alternative Circle in 2016. It was the craziest thing as well. My previous business had recently gone through a shock, not unlike COVID, in the sense that it was exogenous, but it only affected us because of certain circumstances. And therefore, we had to scale down operations. And I decided, because I was such a small shareholder then, to take the leap and be sort of my own man, for lack of a better word. It was my time to be like Warren and Jamie and all these heroes I admired. And so we started, and I went to a meeting with a friend of mine, and he then told me that he was leaving where he used to work and was about to join a very, very forward-thinking Icelandic company that was into credit scoring and decisioning. That company later invested $1 million in us in 2018.
Oh, wow.
And it's because we kept in tabs, because as we were solving the three things I mentioned earlier, it became obvious that we needed a decisioning partner who had not just sort of the pedigree, but also the experience. In Kenya at the time, we had no real data scientists who had credit data experience. None of the credit bureaus had any systems that could work well with what we were trying to do. And so it was one of those very weird, we met at the right time situation. And that's how we started. The vision of Alternative Circle is quite ambitious. We wanted to build a tool for entrepreneurs to achieve the greatness that's within them. And we wanted that tool to be on a mobile phone, smartphone, because we took a bet that in the next 5 years, majority of Kenyans would have a smartphone. And if you know anything about Kenyans, we are all hustlers. Like, we have side jobs, side hustles. I work for Stacy, but I have a shop in town, and I have a laundry business in the village. So we felt like if there's one thing Kenyans need, is a tool that centralizes all their financial services in one place, so that they can achieve the greatness they require. Because one of the big challenges in Africa is that lack of financial data, which, yeah. I talk a lot, by the way, Stacey, so you need to stop me.
No, I love it. I'm all ears. Could you kind of give me an example? So if I were to come to you, what would that look like?
Well, so right now we've got 3 features on the app. We have an app called SHIKA. SHIKA app means to grab. So basically, grab your future. It's yours, right? In Swahili. And we have SMS, so communication, loans, and then news. And the idea was that you download the app, you register, and you sort of curate the business news you need to make your business effective. And going forward, we're going to add some really cool features like real-time pricing of commodities and stuff like that. And then on the loan side, we wanted to have a supermarket of different loan products depending, and not even just loan products. Right now, it's one loan product, the 30-day. But the idea is to have several types of financial services. Do you want to save for 3 months? So we have a money market fund locked with one of the guys. Do you want to get 100,000 instead of the 5,000 shilling emergency loan? We have a partner who we can forward your 30-day loan repayment history, and they can consider you for that 100,000. Do you have insurance needs that are very unique to your business? Are you a boda rider? Are you a mamamboga who has sometimes you could get the city council comes and raids the market and then destroys some of your goods, so stuff like that.
Got it.
Yeah, the vision is sort of giving you these tools to make sure that you can survive in this in the marketplace, because the smaller you are, the more exposed you are to a lot of risk.
Definitely. And something that we've spoken about in the past is how you want to change the perception of African founders. How do you think African founders are currently perceived, and how do you think we can drive that change?
I think the first thing is that founders are perceived to be incompetent. African founders are perceived to be incompetent. And I've seen that myself. The reason being, a lot of the investors, particularly the foreign ones, and I mean no disrespect, come from these very elite business schools. So Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, right? And have been trained to work in a marketplace that is structured and stable. What they don't realize is that those of us who've been in the African context, say of us like Nairobi is a man-eat-man world, man. It's not a place for the faint of heart. Capitalism is the definition of Nairobi. And so because the market's not so big, a lot of the games being played are also quite zero-sum, right? And a lot of these elite training schools understand the zero-sum markets well, but are mainly trained to play in that positive-sum game. I take some, you give some, type thing. The other thing is that they think we're incompetent because the nuance, that makes the African entrepreneur, how to address governmental issues, how to acquire customers and retain their trust. Those are very nuanced in every market. And so sometimes when we're talking about our marketing plan and our go-to market strategies, they don't sound sophisticated, right? And sometimes that perception of incompetence can then be the badge. But what I'm saying is it's not true. However, there are some weaknesses in that because the market's so small, we look at P&Ls and balance sheets from a cash point of view. So we're always looking at the cash numbers because also the markets are quite small. And so when we start being asked to model out, these complex 5-year into the future, adding all these different products, what's the unit cost of this, what's the ARPU on that, there's sort of like a learning curve that needs to be taken through. And sometimes I think that's the other thing African founders are not able to communicate to potential investors and say, look, I know my business very well, but I don't know how to put it on an Excel sheet the way you want me to, right? How are we changing the perception? One is by being successful, by trying to be successful, by showing the world that we know what we're doing. And just because you've not given us the money doesn't mean that we will not be successful. We will be successful. And I think time will tell. I think you're going to see a lot of African entrepreneurs in the next 5 to 10 years building these remarkable businesses, and in quotes, seemingly out of thin air. But I can tell you for a fact they're not out of thin air. It's just that they did not have the tools some of the other um, sort of VC-backed businesses had.
You mentioned the zero sum game. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I don't live by the zero-sum game. I live by the positive-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
And the positive-sum game is a concept in the game theory, which basically says, how do we find a win-win situation for both parties on either side of the table? And so it's coming to the table and just being open and transparent and saying, hey, Stacy, I want to enter the South African market, and these are the tools I have. I want this from you. What do you want in return for them? Mm-hmm. Right? I think what that does, it makes negotiations shorter, right? It makes execution easier because then you've built a sense of trust from day one. And then you can take these big bets, and you don't have to hide when things go bad. You don't have to hide. You don't want to protect interests because you're all on the same side. And a really good example of this is Warren Buffett. I told you he's my hero. And there's several deals he's done in his lifetime that was signed on one page. And the most recent was Occidental. He did a deal in 2019 with a company called Occidental. And he basically, I think it was a $10 billion deal. And the total deal document was one page.
Wow.
For $10 billion. And, ask him how he bought Nebraska Furniture Mart, ask him how he bought Seas Candy, ask him how he got into, some of they own a lot of assets 100%, right? Even the Kraft Heinz deal, even though it didn't go very well, if you listen to the way that deal was structured and how they came to it, it took a short time. Every party on the table was very clear what they wanted. They got aligned and they started working as a team towards that objective. Another great example is how YouTube was bought. The decision was made in 10 days by the Google board, right? So again, this is a great opportunity. Get everyone into the room. What do you guys want? Sort of get to an arrangement where everyone's happy and then start working together. And then guess what? Look at YouTube today, right?
Exactly.
And that's my point is positive sum games are able to create these vast amount of value in a short time, and everyone is happy. So if you go to the founders of YouTube, if you told them, did you want to be a billionaire? They'd have told you yes. Are you a billionaire today? They'll say yes, right? Mm-hmm. And that's my point. Did you impact the world the way you envisioned? If you ask them, they probably will say yes, because YouTube now, for example, is the largest music streaming service in the world outside America.
What advice do you have for those wanting to start their own business or enter the fintech space? You mentioned having a few failed ventures in the beginning of your career, and I'm interested to know, what did you take away from it, and how can somebody who's entering maybe their first startup take away from that?
Wow. The best advice I'd give someone would not make sense until you go through it.
Yeah.
There's a legendary investor called Doug Leone. He runs a fund called Sequoia. And he once talked about the thing called the abyss, ABYSS. And the abyss is something that every entrepreneur must go through. And it's understanding that failure is part of the game, mm-hmm. and that you are in control of the outcome, right? And caring. So what their BIS teaches you, and this is what the concept is one, you have to start. The thing I tell entrepreneurs is you can research, you can plan, you can look for advice, but until you start, you don't know. So you must start. Number two is that just because it doesn't work the first time, right, doesn't mean you should give up. The market is the most important thing, your customer. So listen to what your customer wants and solve that problem, right? And so that segues into, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should not be looking for money. You should be looking for a way to solve a problem, then commercialize it. And there's a famous economist in Oxford, I don't know if he's still alive, that he defines business this way. He says business is the ability of an entrepreneur to solve a problem and then commercialize it. In places like Africa, I want to add an additional point, is that please, as African founders, dream big, right? I think one of the big challenges we have is we always look around and we say, oh yeah, but we're in Africa, we shouldn't be raising $100 million, we shouldn't be raising $1 billion. Who said? If there's an opportunity that needs $1 billion to make X amount of value for stakeholders, the money will come. My mentor, one of the gentlemen I met during the time when I was working, once told me that good ideas don't chase money. Money chases good ideas. And so dreaming big, right, is a good thing, because it shows that you're thinking way out into the future. And it also shows that you're trying to solve a problem that could potentially have massive impact in your ecosystem, in your economy, and in your environment. And a lot of times entrepreneurs have positive impact. They have some bad impact, for sure, but that big vision usually solves several problems at the same time. And so I'm challenging African entrepreneurs. If you're looking to build a $10 million business and an American guy is looking to build $1 billion business, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because there's nothing different between the two of you.
Well, thanks so much, Kevin, for all your knowledge and advice and for joining me on this podcast. Where can listeners find you on social media, and what's the best platform to reach you on?
The best place to reach me is on Twitter. My handle is at Kevin Mutiso. And then on LinkedIn, I write a lot. My handle is Kevin Mutiso as well. And then Medium as well. I really write a lot on Medium. And again, if you look for Kevin Mutiso there, you'll find me.
Okay, great. I'll be sure to link everything down below and on our social media as well. Thank you again, Kevin. It was such a delight to have you on the podcast.
Asante sana, as we say in Nairobi.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Talking Success, connecting the global fintech community. Feel free to follow us on Instagram at Talent in the Cloud. And if you're interested in exec talent, or you yourself are looking for a new exciting change in your career, check out our website, talentinthecloud.io.